started at 4:30. We adjourned for executive session or legislative litigation strategy.
I'm going to see if
I've got it.
There we go. Okay. Again, welcome, March 6, 2023, our work session tonight. Testing. Any idea why we're getting feedback there?
I just turned it on.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Testing. There. Well, you still hearing feedback?
Not much.
Okay. Well, we'll hope it doesn't get too bad. So this is our work session, and as I said before, we earlier were in executive session to discuss litigation strategy, and now we are back on the record. We have 4 items on our agenda. There's a copy of the agenda on the back if anybody would like. We'll open up with public comment on any item, whether it's on our agenda or not tonight. Before jumping into item 1, our Crowley Fleck lobbyist update, and we're also privileged to have 2 legislators with us. We'll start with our 2 legislators. But first, public comment on any item. Is there any public comment? Seeing no one coming forward, asking if there's anybody online. I don't see any hands up online or faces or.
Give me 1 second, Mayor. There is somebody online.
Mayor?
We are told there is somebody online, so while we look for that.
I don't know if the door is unlocked now that people could come in.
We'll check. There was some question about whether the door has been unlocked. Could Wyeth could we get somebody to just check to make sure that the door in from the parking lot, right, is unlocked? Kevin Iflin confirmed there was no one online, so we'll close the public comment period. Initial public comment period. There'll be an opportunity later on these each of these items, as well as items not on our agenda. So the first item up, though, is our legislative update. And we're privileged tonight to have 2 former city council members. There are currently at least three former city council members serving in the Montana legislature. Senator Christopher Dell on the Senate side, and then Larry Brewster and Mike Yakowicz. So welcome, gentlemen. We appreciate your service. You may not, but we do, and better you than us. We know it's taken an awful lot of time and energy and emotional energy, so thank you again for your service. So we'll just, I'm going to turn it over to Larry. Council members, ballpark, I guess my gut tells me we want to spend about an hour on this item, but not a lot more. And so if we spend roughly 30 minutes or a little bit more with our legislators, roughly 30 minutes, then with our lobbyists, that'll be in the neighborhood of an hour. Amy Grumella is our lobbyist with Crowley Fleck firm, is also with us, and she'll go after our legislators. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Larry, unless Chris, you had anything in the way of introductions beyond that. Okay, well, very good. Oh, and Senator Christopher Dell has also joined us. So we'll start with Larry, and then we'll go to Representative Mike Yakowicz, and then also Senator Friedel. So Larry, thank you, and welcome back.
Thank you all. I'll introduce myself a little. Larry Brewster. I represent House District 44, which is the west side of the Heights. I serve on several committees in the legislature, policy committees. I don't know if you guys know how that's structured. There's a group of policy committees that set policy, and then there's budget committees that decide whether or not you get the money to fund your policies. So that's sort of how it works. Anyway, I serve on energy, telecom, and federal relations. That's one committee. So I deal with all the issues with the Native Americans and the reservations in the federal part of it, or if there are issues with the federal government. That committee deals with that. And telecom, if you're putting in fiber somewhere in Montana or getting federal grants that the state has to sign off on, it comes through that committee. And energy, so we deal a lot with the public utilities and the Public Service Commission and those kind of things. I then serve on the tax committee, and pretty much every tax that anybody asks for or tax credit goes through that committee. And they set the policy on tax credits and taxes in general. And then they go to appropriations and they generally tear it all up and throw it away and do something different. And lastly, I serve on local government, and I'm the chair of that committee this term. So that's been really interesting, hurting not only the members of the committee, but all the bills that come through the committee, and trying to make sure they get fair hearings. And particularly when things become compressed. I think we did a good job on that committee this year of making sure everybody had an opportunity to testify and to have their input on whatever was before us. But tonight, I just thought because you guys are a local government, I'd just review some of the things that I think you ought to be interested in, and then where some of the things are that I've worked with a few of you on, and where they're at in the process. So I just made a few notes. House Bill 269 is actually a disaster mitigation bill, and I believe the governor was here just a few days ago touting that bill. I actually carry that bill in the legislature, and what it does is sets aside $108 million initially, and they're going to earn the interest off it, and that $8 million, what they expect to gain every biennium, they'll use that for matching money on federal projects and state projects. For instance, if the canal company had a bank tear out and they needed to get a grant or something in a hurry, but they didn't have enough to match, they'd apply to this fund and they would provide match money for those kind of projects in there. The goal is to leverage about $25 million for every $1 million that comes out of that fund. So it's a good idea, but it's got a big price tag. So currently it's tabled in appropriations, but that doesn't mean it's dead. So they're still working on their final budget, and that'll get worked into it in some form. I hope exactly where it is, because it really needs to be that much to do much good. And but I'm optimistic. And a lot of the people on that committee tell me it's going to make it out. We just have to figure out how. House Bill 355 is an infrastructure bill by Representative Fitzpatrick. He lives, I think he's up in Great Falls, maybe. Yeah. And he picked out a large sum of money, and they're going to apportion it out based on population. And if the bill passes through and gets through appropriations like it is, I think it brings in just over $38.5 million to Yellowstone County for infrastructure. So that should be of interest to you. The local districts bill, a couple, 3 years ago when that whole deal was going on with the Heights Water District, there was a suggestion that there was no path in law in Montana for those districts to merge. No pathway. It just didn't exist, and that's true. So I've been snooping around all this term so far looking for models to use or some way to get it done. And so I thought about it for once and said, well, what local governments have merged? And I thought of Butte Silverbow and Butte City. They did that. So I looked up there, the statutes that they created to allow that to happen. And it had a pathway in it. And so I worked with my favorite bill writer, who's really competent and really understands local government and especially water districts. And we worked on that for a little while, and I think we came up with a fair and reasonable process. It doesn't force anybody to do anything, but it does give a pathway. And there's points within the pathway where you have to negotiate certain things. And if you can negotiate your way through all of that, then you're allowed to merge. So I think it'll be a good tool not only for this body or for the district, but some of the 850 other water and sewer districts in Montana. If they grow out so much that they're adjacent to another district, they'd be able to use this same pathway to merge those districts. Even in the title of the bill, it says for sewer and water, or water. So that's moving along. It's passed out of the House. So it'll be assigned to a committee in the Senate, probably Senator Friedel's committee. It's interesting they have chairs from the local government in both houses from Billings City Council. How often does that happen?
That's only because this is such a great training ground.
Absolutely. Local, or the methamphetamine bill that Councilman Neese asked me to, it's gone through the House and it's been assigned to judiciary in the Senate. So there'll be a hearing come up on that, whenever they get around to it, I guess. And then we'll see how it goes from there, but it's halfway there. There was a local government expenditure limit bill that most of the cities in Montana were unhappy about. It actually was tabled in House local government. Another one was a referendum on growth policies. This legislator wanted you to vote, have a referendum on your growth policy, but it was tabled. Those are probably the best ones. There's one that's going to move the elections to even years so that they can consolidate all the elections on one ballot. So, and I believe it says that they move the terms forward. Isn't that what it says? Yeah, I think so. So if you had a 4-year term and it's supposed to end next year, but that bill went into effect 2 years after, you would serve an extra 2 years. Lucky guys. Anyway, that's a few that I had, and I'll let these other legislators speak a little, and if you have questions later, we can hang around for them.
Larry, why don't we get questions for Larry now while we've got him, and then we'll turn it over. So
If there's some other bills you're interested in.
on those or other bills, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Larry, actually, that last bill you talked about the elections. We had some concerns over that as far as how that may impact the election of our second judge that we need to do this year, if that would actually delay that for another year. Could you speak to that?
Oh, if on this term change, I'll let Chris do it. It's his bill. I had a check by not to say anything about it, but I blew that.
Okay.
All right, well, I'd let
Well,
Chris answer that.
Well, and we can hold that question until another time if others want to ask Larry some questions.
Yeah, we'll definitely want Councilmember, or Councilmember, Senator Friedel to comment.
Thank you.
Other questions for Larry?
Yeah.
Councilmember Tiswell.
How are you doing, sir? Good?
Good.
Good. Hey, what was the number of the bill that you were talking about it would affect our growth policy?
Which one?
The one that would affect our growth policy, city growth policy?
Oh, it's tabled. Yeah, it got killed, so. I just, I knew had some of you were concerned about some of these, and I just wanted you to know they can always come back, but right now they're tabled.
Councilmember Purinton.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank all three of you for being here and for taking our questions and being open to legislation that we see specific not only to Billings but also to other municipalities in Billings. And this may be a question that I have that Chris can address, but since you brought it up, I'm just trying to figure out the dynamics of what this election bill would do in taking it to the general election even number of years.
I'm going to let the senator have that
Okay,
one.
that's fine. That's fine.
Because all of
So
those.
you'll have a lot of questions on that
There's a
one.
number of bills that relate to councils, and they're all in his purview, so I don't need to speak for him.
Larry, do you know the status of, I guess it'd be Senator Usher? Bill on the sober living homes? That ran into some headwinds on sober living homes requiring registration and belonging to national organizations and things like that?
Senate Bill 94.
Most of them start in the Senate. Most of them start in the Senate,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, more
Yeah,
things
and
to comment
He's
on?
better up to speed on those than I am, because I don't know if you've ever been there, but we say hello to the senators. When we get there, we never see them again. Until we're in their committees.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for Larry before I guess I established Mike Yakowicz as being next, Representative Yakowicz. Chris?
Mayor and Council, Larry White, or Representative Brewster, I just wanted to speak. You mentioned House Bill 269, the governor was here for. I just want to emphasize, thank you. And I think maybe what people don't fully appreciate, so the taxpayers of this city have spent just north of $600,000 over the last 4 summers band-aiding scenarios to try to prevent the ditch from failing and flooding the core. Yes, we have conversations with BBWA about their maintenance responsibilities and ours. The truth is, in the geological work that's been done by Public Works paid for, the entire hillside, which those of you who've lived here for a long time understand this, particularly east of 27th, all the way to the tunnel, it's really, the ditch is not as much the issue, is underneath the ditch, that entire hillside is sliding.
Hydrology.
Exactly. So the idea of moving that tunnel or other solutions that are over my head, but that really is the issue. It's not a maintenance issue. It is one of catastrophic failure. So thank you for carrying it. And as our community, I mean, it is responsible for the single biggest flood this community has ever had. And there's some 17,000 acres of ag ground to the east that if there's a failure, I think we all know there's going to be a lot of lawsuits and a lot of fingers pointed around. So thanks for that support. And that's why we supported the governor when he was here.
Can I mention just one more quickly?
Please.
I do have a bill, it's just, I'm gonna take it out and put it in the hopper when I get back, but it actually asked for an appropriation for $17 million for the park areas around your lakes, those 200-acre lakes. So when that comes up in committee, appreciate some support on it.
Absolutely, and thank you for carrying our water literally on that one, I guess, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Representative Yakowicz.
I don't mind the senator going first. He's has higher priority.
Yeah, you were here first. Well,
All right, well, thank you. My name is Mike Yakowicz, Yakawich.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, and
your address, please, sir.
Your Honorable,
No, that's okay.
206 South 32nd Street. I actually, one of the reasons I ran, Mayor, is to get elected so I could come here and thank all of you. All of you are hardworking, dedicated people, and I know that because we know we're walking the walk and talking the talk, and each of you have dedicated not only 2 years, but 4 years, potentially 8 years, and I just want to thank you. I'm sure we all are very grateful for the hours you put in that a lot of people don't know. And the staff I always say the staff always made me look good when I did good. If I did bad, it was my fault. So same in Helena, the people there are great. We have drafters. We have people who are working, 40, 50 people working. They help us take your idea and put it into a bill. Then we bring it into a committee, and these committees are incredible, 20 people at a time. I'd have to say 99 of the House people up there are the smartest people I ever met. And they're just dedicated to serving Montana. So in these committees, there's 25 people there, hearing your bill and making a decision. Usually they don't decide until you're gone, if they're going to table it or kill it or leave it go on. And it's just a great process. It goes to the floor, then it goes to the Senate. I'm learning the process, and also it's really a dynamic process of you have to know your bill, you have to know where you're going and what you're doing. So I'm just very honored to know Senator Friedel. He's a hard-working senator, and all of them are hard-working, really. Last week we put 14 hours in 2 days, 14 hours each day. And usually they come in at 6 in the morning, 6:30, 7, and leave around 5 or 6 to another meeting. So I just am humbled and inspired. Representative Brewster is a chair of a committee. So not only is he carrying bills, but then he's leading, I think he said he was herding sheep. I don't think he said that exactly, but leading 20 alpha male and females is a lot of work and dedicated. And anyway, just can't help but say my gratitude to the legislators up there. So I want to thank Councilmember Shaw, who pulled me and asked me to run a bill for you, and I'm honored to run that bill, and then all of you pitched in and helped out. that bill, with the great help of Amy Grisales, Amy is worth her weight in gold, okay? And I actually was less humble when I was a city councilman evaluating lobbyists. Now I've come to really appreciate their value. And Steve, and I know she will help me, Turkowitz, credible guy. I mean, these two people exemplify lobbyists who get your back, cover your back, help you. I was down and out and depressed, and then they picked me up and helped me, and they said, keep on going, Yakowicz. Anyway, that bill is, you know about that bill, House Bill 534. And to the credit of Chairman Brewster, the bill was tabled. And Chairman Brewster worked hard with Amy and Steve and brought that bill to life. And then I was honored to bring it to the floor. And on the floor, you might have to watch it sometime, even Representative Brewster helped out to keep it going. So it's fun, it's dynamic experience. And I just wanted, if anybody wants to know more, legmt.gov is where people can go to find out about bills, about state government. It's a great website. And I'm just learning how to navigate it, but it's a great source for finding out bills. So other than that, there are just some bills that I'm actually, someone said, are all these your ideas? I said, no, I'm not that smart. I'm carrying bills from my constituents, like our city government. And it's really a great bill trying to address abatement. Part of my heart is taking that 9,500 to 25,000 so we can quickly abate houses and structures in the municipal court. So I'm hopeful about it. I believe, and now we'll go into the Senate. We also, there's one called MIRA, Montana Emergency Rental Assistance, which got news here. And thanks to, again, constituents who said run the bill, fiscal responsibility. And here's a key. Be nice to people. That's one key I've learned in Helena. Also, work with other people. Try to work with them. And the staff there, or the staff or department leaders, they're actually your allies. Work with, so Department of Conference stepped in and helped out with this bill. The bill passed on the floor. And they actually said, yes, this is important, that we do a evaluation of a bill regarding funding for a lot of money that goes to help people with housing, motel and hotel. Just questioning accountability. A couple other bills was, you may recall on First Avenue South when a young lady died in a car accident, and the young man was intoxicated but was taken blood sample 4 hours later or so. Not to get too much in detail, but the family asked me to carry this bill that just speeds up the process of taking blood from someone who's in a vehicular, homicidal, or a very serious accident, not just a DUI stop, and speed up the process. And it was so great, the Highway Patrol stepped in and was a proponent and said, yes, this is an important bill to just speed the process up, to get the warrant in order to get the blood, and not the police officer taking the blood, but a designated person. We had a mobile home bill that was a great attempt, but it didn't get as much traction. It was tabled. Another one, Department of Corrections, working on a bill bringing people out of prison early, 14 months or less, and it's to bring them into pre-release. And it was a bill, it was actually done 10 years ago, and it was a very good process. A lawyer came along and said, no, we can't do it. Now Department of Corrections has new lawyers. Anyway, God bless our lawyers. And why I think it's very important, I just visited with pre-release today, spent about an hour with them. And it just speeds up the process of getting people back on their feet, getting out of prison, and getting into pre-release versus just dropping them into the community right away, right out of prison. So those are some of my main bills. Again, thank you for stepping up, and when we do need support, like proponents, really it's so valuable hearing from you. Mayor, thank you for your letter for that bill for the abatement. It was very helpful. And again, Amy and Steve have been really great allies, great support up there. Again, I'll just circle back. Thank you for your hard work. You are dedicated, and you look so young. and refreshed. I don't know how you do it.
We haven't had to put it in as many 14-hour days. Thank you. Questions for Representative Yakowicz? Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you for carrying this bill for the city. I definitely can't take credit for it myself. The suggestion came from the nuisance property team that's headed by Kevin Ifland, that they really evaluated it. They brought it to the legislative committee. We voted unanimously to pass it on to you. And so we're very grateful that you have been willing to carry this. And I know a passion of yours. And so it seemed like a really good fit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Nees for reaching out, and Councilman Purinton also. It's always great to hear from you, hear your ideas and thoughts. And Representative, Councilmember Purinton has asked me to attend your 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So I'll be happy to attend that legislative meeting on Wednesday. And I'll give you some more of the scoop, okay? The scoop of all the good things happening up in Helena.
Other questions for Representative? Representative, the MIRA bill,
Yes.
I think as many people know here, the money that was available to make under the Montana Emergency Rental Assistance Act or whatever, to fund people in hotels and motels was running out. And would this bill replace that, or what would this new bill do?
Great question, Mayor. Basically, it's just, it will end at the end of this year, potentially. And most people realize that it's been a good funding. It's helped. It's not a negative. But the bill itself is just to find out fiscal responsibility, find out where the money went to, who received the money, how it was spent. Because one of a couple of the constituents in the community working in homeless said, what we want to be is able to capture the people who've been receiving it so that by the end of the year, they're not just dropped out into the community carte blanche. They want to be able to maybe follow up, see what we can do to catch them as the funding gradually goes down. New funding may come, but Department of Commerce said that this was, the ending was December, it ended December.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if I don't see any other, Councilor Purinton?
Thank you. And Representative Yakowicz, I think this DOC 14-month pre-release program is excellent because a lot of those people are just dropped out into the community and they have such a difficult time getting back into society. And sometimes our system is meant for people to fail. And I think this is one of the things that shows that, no, we want people to succeed. And I think with all the resources that the state provides and communities provide for some of these people that have gotten themselves into problems, that this gives them an opportunity to get back into society and to show their productivity and their willingness to work, because it does take work. And I appreciate, are you carrying that bill?
Yeah, I'm carrying, those bills that I mentioned, I'm carrying. And great comment. What I'm learning actually is we're all on a learning curve, right? Recidivism rate is 25% when we use pre-release. That means 3 out of 4 are successful. And also, even in pre-release, the success is 80 to 90% getting out of pre-release into the community. Recidivism, though, is marked by 3 years. So if people go back into jail after 3 years, then that's where that statistics come. But pre-release is really being successful in doing a lot of cognitive work, meaning they're trying to help them not only with anger management and all that, but helping them understand why they're there. And they're using a lot of research and cutting edge research on trying to work with counselors and helping them get back on their feet. So I'm a real proponent of that. Mayor, thank you so much. And Mayor, congratulations on your dinner, the Mayor's World Language Dinner. Congratulations on that too. And all of you, congratulations on the volunteer dinner that you all did. I'm proud of you for carrying that on. Deputy Mayor Boyette, all of you.
Member Boyette's leadership, we did it even without you.
All right, I will now turn it on. Can I introduce?
Please.
The amazing Senator Friedel, former city councilman, hard worker, dedicated to the community and to the state of Montana. Welcome up, Senator Chris Friedel.
I feel like I should break into applause, but yeah.
Try not to be humble after that, gentlemen. I swear, that's probably the most humble person I've ever met in my life. It's almost like 3 days ago I was in front of one of these bad boys. Chris Friedel, Senate District 26 Senator from the great city of Billings. Oh my good Lord, I'm still up there. Well, one of the things I've done, obviously I've heard some questions and a lot of them actually come through the Senate. If you know your policy, a lot of policy comes through the Senate, a lot of money comes through the House. And so right now we're in what's called transmittal. So basically everything that's gone over policy-wide from our side to that side is over there. Whatever's left over on this side is dead. Same goes the other way. That's why they call it transmit, because they transmit it to the other house. And so that's what we're doing right now. So the reason why we're taking a break isn't because of us, it's because to give time to the groups to actually move these things around. And so I know a lot of the stuff I'm dealing with, my background obviously is in dealing with judiciary and obviously local government and business and whatnot, but I am on judiciary on the Senate side of things. And so I'm also on highway and transportation, which seemed to be very, very boring, to the point where I was like, wow, I think we've only had like 16 days, which means we only have 2 days a week that we meet. I think we had 16 days this transmittal already, and I think we've only met for 6 times, so it was very slow, very interesting. The reason I say that is because I'm also the chair in the Senate of local government, so you actually have 2 former city council people from the city of Billings as chairs up in Helena. To put in perspective, there's only 7 chairs on my side. I think it was, 8 on your side? So out of maybe 15 or 16 chair opportunities, you have 2 of your former city council people chairing some of the more important ones, especially this session. Because I can tell you last session to this session, I bet you we've done 3 times more mini bills through just the Senate side of things, and we haven't even gotten over to the second half of the committee. So there's a lot of things that we saw, a lot of things I know, there's a lot of things y'all had some heartburn about, and there's also things that got through. But remember, there's what we call the 7 layers of hell. You got Senate committee, for second floor, or second reading, third reading, gets over to the House. Then you got committee, second, third, and then you have the proverbial governor signing it. So all bills may not live. In fact, the average is about 20%. So when you see the big numbers on the screen, don't fret. Most of those are actually just LCs. In fact, if you look me up, I have 38 bills, and about 18 of them are just holds in case I needed them in time frame. Some of the things I'm doing as far as when it comes to local government, I know there were some questions in regards to moving forward on even years. One of the things I've heard from a lot of constituencies, even when I was in your chair, is that of voting fatigue. It seems like every year we're voting on something. And so what I did is I concocted a plan to move you guys, city council, mayor, to even years, so it's all kind of on one ballot. Obviously, the arguments was there's a lot of things going on the ballot, like every year there is. What will happen is that moving forward is how I concocted this little bill, was that in the event that you were to term out, you just term out and then they would move on. If you were to could be cut short, you could be reappointed for at least that 1 or 2 year period to move it forward until the even years caught up with everything. So the transition will be very simple. Within 2 years, you'll actually just be rotated into an even year elections. And that's only going to be dealing with the mayor and city council. So I didn't put anything like, anything else outside of that. I think that it was just a simple bill to get that process moving forward. I thought that way. I also had another bill that actually brings it to, we are a first class or a class A city, so we could have up to 10 wards. We're actually a lot of 10 wards. And so I have a bill that actually makes it one member per ward. And I was actually speaking to a couple of the city council people here. I said, hey, are my recommendations, I know you guys are next in line when it comes to doing your redistricting. And I suggest that if this bill were to pass, you're not going to lose anybody. All it's going to do is just going to give you 10 districts. And I think it's going to be easier for you guys to manage those 10 districts because they'll be smaller. I don't know if you guys are aware, all of us are aware. These districts, or these wards, they're bigger than my Senate district. When I ran in city council Ward 3, I want to say it was like 25,000 houses. My Senate district has a little under 22,000. So it tells you how big these are. And I think for better representation, just to have smaller wards, so cut them in half and make them smaller so people can represent them properly. So no one's going to go anywhere. You got to redistrict anyway. My suggestion is it gives the option either leave it at 5 districts or go to 10. And if you guys decide to stay at 5, unfortunately, 5 of you will be not here. But I would hope you guys would have a plan to say, we need 10. And I think you guys should district appropriately. I had a lot of those people call me and ask me and thought that was a better option to go with. And I think we're growing to that point. We're a big enough city. I think we're pushing $1.80, almost $1.90 in the county. And I think we're responsible for 120 to 150 of those people, 1,000, sorry. And so I think that it helps out with better representation now that we have a lot of infill. Some other bills I actually have remote testimony for attorneys. So in the event that you happen to have a case out in Savage, Montana, you don't have to skedaddle up there to have a status hearing and then come all the way back to Billings and have an actual hearing. And these are non-substantive ones. They're talking about the ones that are status hearings and things like that. So there's nothing, no one's going to jail, no one's going, that's going to happen. It's more of a kind of a back and forth. And it saves the taxpayers about $600,000 a biennium. So, I mean, you're looking, I know it's crazy, bills that bring money back to the community. I know it's crazy. But those are one of the couple of things I've done. I know there was a conversation, I believe, was it City Councilman Neeson in regards to Senate Bill 94. It did get through committee. I know I was a no, but there's various reasons for that. I try to not get our state sued. But not be less, I think it passed third reading, I think 43-7 or 47-3.
If everybody's curious, that's the Recovery Residence Sober Living Home, Senate Bill 94.
Sorry. You're going to find out when you talk to any legislator, don't give me a title. I won't remember it. You give me a number and I can tell you all about the bill. Don't ask me how that works, especially when we have, I think what do we have in surviving, about 1,200 bills still surviving. So 1,200 bills, you give me a Senate bill number or a House bill number and I can tell you what it's about for the most part. I know it's weird, but it's a thing up there. So, yes, sober living house, I think it was either 43-7 or 47-3. I'd have to look it up, but it passed, it's onto the House. And so at this point, it'll go to the House Judiciary and they'll have their bite of the apple on that. Outside of that, just trying to clean stuff up and trying to move things forward. I know that in the Senate local government, as I said, I bet we've had at least 3 times as many bills than we did the previous sessions. And so you can tell between the two houses in local government that it's a very big priority, not only for the state, but also for county and cities to find ways to see if we can find ways to either cut down on all the overregulation and ideas and things like that. I know like Senate Bill 382 or 282 or 42, it's one of those 3 that deals with those kind of concepts. And so I know that it sounds scary on TV, but what it's given is it's given some freedoms. And so I don't necessarily think it's pointed at Billings. I think actually Billings does a great job because obviously our houses aren't going out of control and we have a lot of land going in either direction. And I know you guys are about to crack grass over there in our belt loop. Awesome. I can't tell you how long him and I and a lot of the other Heights people have been trying to get that thing moving. But I think in the city of Billings does a great job. But we're dealing with things that you don't necessarily see here, but like in Bozeman and Missoula and Kalispell and Whitefish, there's people living in mobile homes. I mean, when I say mobile homes, I'm talking about the one you pull behind your car, not the ones that you go out there in a mobile home park. There's people living in tents. In fact, one of the bills we had in local government is actually coming to you because we thought it was funny. You ever heard of glamping? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I didn't. I was like glamping, glamorous camping. Okay, it's interesting. Essentially, it's camping luxuriously. So essentially, fancy tent, plumbing, electricity in the middle of somewhere. It's an interesting concept I didn't think was even possible, but just to kind of put it in perspective, that's kind of the things they're talking about for Bozeman and Missoula. So, I mean, it's not, when we talk about state, you have to realize we're not focusing on any individual city or county. We're going after the whole state. And a lot of the bills you're going to hear from our House, through the Senate local government, even the House, is trying to find ways to take certain things that need to kind of be generalized. Because a lot of business owners like to have things consistent. When I go to Billings, I want to build a house. When I go into Bozeman, I want to build a house, and they should be relatively consistent when it comes to building houses. Unfortunately, when you go to places like Bozeman and Missoula, I hate picking on them, but unfortunately, we've heard a lot from those people, that it's very difficult, and you wonder why their houses are $800, $900 million. It's not because the houses are any more fancier than the ones we have in Billings. It's because they have no houses in Bozeman, Missoula, and Kalispell. They've nestled themselves right into the Rockies. And so these are the kind of things that we need to figure out. How do we reduce the amount of red tape and regulations to get the ball rolling and kind of come up with some ideas? And so may not all be perfect, but we're out there trying to do it. And unfortunately, some areas are just stuck, over-regulating to the point where the house has to look a certain way with a certain color and a certain sun angle, things like that. So, any questions?
Yeah, looks like we've got a couple. Councilmember Joy Princeton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I was wondering, every bill has notes that are attached, and what kind of weight do legislators really put on those, both fiscal notes and legal notes? Because there are legal notes that are attached to bills that may actually suggest that the bill may be challenged. And so what weight do you put on fiscal or legal notes that are attached to your bills? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mayor, Councilwoman Joy. Depends on the bill. If you're talking about revenue bills, you're talking about House Bill 2. We definitely look at the fiscal notes, but we understand that those are gonna be big numbers. We're talking about a state of, a million people. Depends on what the concept is. I mean, if the concept's to say, we need to add something monotonously or, benign, like an extra chair in here for $1 million, we're gonna have a little bit of a consternation. It's gonna cost $1 million to add 4 or 5 chairs here. But if we're talking about, say for instance, dealing with what we're talking about in regards to the ditch, that's gonna be a bigger number. So we're gonna expect bigger numbers to come in when it deals with those kind of situations. But legal notes, bear in mind, legal notes, they do have a possibility, doesn't necessarily go through. But a lot of bills actually don't have a lot of legal notes. If the bill drafter and the legislator that's drafting the bill is pretty mindful of what they're doing, they do a pretty good job. It's a rare occasion. Usually you'll see a legal note on a controversial bill, something that may be challenging the narrative that may or may not pass muster, and there may be some conflictions, but that's about as far as it goes. Usually when you look at a bill, if it gets a fiscal note, there should be some technical issues and things like that. So when you look at a fiscal note, you want to look at the numbers. Obviously, it'll be either revenue or expenditure, but then at the bottom, there's technical issues that may arise or not arise, depending on things like, what would be the easiest one? Senator Travis had a bill that had a $300 billion price tag to dealing with removing Medicaid, but there were some technical issues about federal matching and things like that, so we had to look at that. So we take it depending on the subject matter, whether we always look at the fiscal notes, and believe me, if it has a fiscal note, I said 7 layers of hell, there's 8 levels. You have finance and claims, and it has to go through them. And all of those types of bills usually have a tendency to, when it comes to appropriations, comes to the House. But when there's a fiscal note, there's money involved. If it's a negative, like an expenditure of over 50,000, it does go through finance and claims. So that particular bill would have 8 levels of, we call hell, to get through. And those are still alive. Anything that has a fiscal note right now is still alive. They have a little extra time than you would with a policy bill. Because right now, if it's a policy bill that hasn't been transmitted, it's dead unless it has a fiscal note to it.
Councilman Purington had a question.
Thank you. So what is that bill number that you're doing the one member, one vote?
Oh, let me.
381? Okay, and that's a Senate bill, right?
Yes, ma'am, and it got transmitted over pretty healthily
Very
over
good,
to
okay.
the, I can tell you,
So the
381, yes, ma'am.
So the
And
other,
that was bipartisan, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly on that one.
right. So the other kind of question or comment I guess I have on your reasoning for voter fatigue in doing off-year elections as well. But I think we've found in the city, whenever we have, you have ballot fatigue as well. So you wind up having a large ballot, and some vote for everything on the ballot and not. So is that conversation going on, or did that conversation go on whenever introducing this bill?
Mayor, City Councilwoman Puritan, that was an argument that was made. And that particular bill only had one opponent. Now, I think it was Missoula's, what's the person's name, the title, I can't remember what it is. The people that handle our elections, and my brain is tired. I got the capital crud, what they call. But I only had one opposition in that bill, and that came from, as I said, Missoula's, not the clerk or recorder. But
Election administrator?
Election administrator is the one, I believe is what the title was, that it was opposition. And it was fatigue. There was fatigue, but at the same time, my attitude was rip the Band-Aid off, do it all at one time. That way you can take a year off and not have to deal with anything. You're gonna have that fatigue whether or not you like it or not. I mean, especially look at presidential elections, and then when you have amendments or any kind of things like constitutional amendments are all gonna be lapped onto those. So fatigue is, I'd rather get it done one day than have to go back, have to deal with it year after year.
So one follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So on some of these land issue bills, especially, I think it was Vandeville's 382, You know, whenever, in speaking with another legislator, you know, a lot of the issues are in Bozeman, in Missoula, Kalispell, some of these places, but yet these bills are saying you have to impose these for communities over 70,000. That pretty much is Billings. I know Missoula's a little over 70, but yet whenever you say it's for the good of the state, then I keep saying, well, but it's only truly addressing Billings on some of these. And I think with our recode, we've worked through some of these issues. So that was kind of my concern with some of these land use, especially whenever they're targeted for certain populations. Any comments?
Yes, Mayor, City Councilwoman Puritan. Yeah, basically, that actual bill was a bill that was been worked on for the past, I think, 8 to 12 months by Montana League of Cities and Towns. It was also MACO. MACO is the county version of the MTLCT. They worked on it for a while, so there was a lot of people that were involved with that particular bill. I know there was a little bit of a caveat that had in there where they wanted to try it out with cities first, and then counties can opt in and opt out, which I believe was amended before we got it out onto the floor, and that was the only consternation that they had with MACO. That's where that one was this. I mean, honestly, that was a bill that I thought was pretty solid. It does encapsulate actually the big seven in that particular model, because the 70,000, pretty much at this point, all seven of them are across in Great Falls, Missoula, Bozeman, Billings, Kalispell, what did I miss? Missoula. So I mean, those got encapsulated in those ones. So in those situations, my recommendation is that it was a good bill. I thought it was a good bill, made a good sense. Big bill. Definitely read it before he passed it. But that being said, I would definitely talk to the MACO representatives and Montana League of Towns and find out why they liked it so much that they were willing to spend that kind of that time, effort, and energy to pass it. And I heard that was probably the best out of all the ones dealing with land use.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'll be fast.
Great. We'll keep going. Councilor Rowan and then Councilor McGillick.
I'll be as fast as I can.
Sure.
I can't make any promises. Senator, thank you for being here tonight. Given our backgrounds, I want to say some things and then just ask you to comment on them.
Cool.
I'm concerned, as you might expect, about the huge number of CPS child welfare bills. And I'm concerned that the impact on local efforts on public safety isn't being considered. So while we have our two chairs here, I just wanted to ask you to please consider that. There are a huge number of reforms being proposed to how child welfare is done. Some of them are good, some of them are very concerning. My overall concern is that the bills are likely to increase the amount of conflict in the system, which brings in a significant burden on local resources, everything from our local law enforcement to local supportive services that are doing substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, demand for public defenders. There is a significant burden, and what I continually hear as we try to talk with legislators about this is we know Yellowstone County is doing much, much better, and in fact it is. Yellowstone County has worked hard to improve that situation for child welfare, to get kids out of the system faster, to not be that continued drain on our public resources. But these bills legislate for the whole state. So even though Yellowstone County has made strides, these bills will upend things here. And I think they will have a significant burden on the resources that we need to battle public safety in other arenas. So I'm curious if you're thinking about that as you're looking at these bills. I'm curious if you will, now that I've asked you to, if you'll consider how these are going to affect local governments who are trying to do things. I know there's a proposal out there to create a separate court system for dependent neglect cases, which I think is very wise. I think it streamlines the court system so that our local courts can be focusing, our district courts can be focusing more on the violent crimes, the felony offenders, doing the public safety things they need to do. But I'm just asking if you're willing to bring that local government lens as you evaluate those bills.
Mayor Cole, Councilwoman Owens. If you haven't noticed, I've had a couple of days off from the Senate, and the head banging has gone away on a lot of these issues. And I try to be a stalwart. I was on the interim HHS committee, and there was a lot of bills that we had come out of there, and I was just like, come on, guys, that you have to look at the other side. Understand that not all of us come from big cities. I went from big city, and I deal with CPS and knowledge and have been for the last 10 years. And I can tell you the struggles that we've had with CPS. It's a matter of we need to put more people out there. We need to have more cleanup, but at the same time, you're correct. I mean, there's a bill that's pushing through, and I tried pushing so hard back on this and saying, guys, you want law enforcement to show up. I don't disagree with maybe having a warrant from a court to remove a child, but at the same time, you're talking two different aspects. You talk to the rural aspect, you have a sheriff and maybe a deputy that takes care of a huge county, and then you have someone like Billings, Montana, where you have plenty of law enforcement. The problem is we have plenty of calls too, and to get somebody over there, even in the last 10 years that I've been dealing with CPS and going out on these cases, it takes 15, 20, 30 minutes to have a law enforcement. I'm not saying they're not doing their job, it's just they're busy. And I try to tell them, like, guys, you kind of have to look at these things, and I'm pretty pragmatic when it comes to these types of bills, but I'm with you there. There's sometimes I'm like, okay, I see how this could be a good thing. I think we need to clean up here, but some legislators like to push the envelope, and a lot of those ideas may be good ideas, but they haven't passed the mustard test, and a lot of them, a good chunk of them have died. But if you want more information on the, I don't say culprits, I apologize. If you want to have a person that's very adamant about cleaning up CPS, I would definitely recommend talking to Senator Usher and Senator Lenz. They have a propensity to push a lot of CPS bills.
Councilor Gillett, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you again, Senator and representatives, for coming. I really appreciate it. And just wanted to speak a little bit of my thoughts on the bill moving local elections to the even years. I think concern I have is right now when they're odd years, it really does elevate the issue of local elections as well as local issues. And if we move it to even years, there's going to be, multi-million-dollar senator campaigns and presidential and representative House elections that we're going to be competing for. There's going to be candidates from House and Senate, they're knocking on doors. I'm going to tell you, there's going to be door knocker fatigue, I think, for a lot of people. And then you're also going to have, we have local mill levy votes, which are really, really key, important things, but there's just a lot of language associated with those. And those are the same time we have constitutional amendments or initiatives. It's going to get a 5 or 6 page ballot, I would imagine. So I guess I'll be urging the committee to not, I'd urge you to reconsider. Care to comment on that?
I mean, if you want to, but I think it's really just more of a comment, but if you want to comment.
Mayor Coles, Councilman Gulick, right? I hope I said that right. I apologize. Well, that's the whole point. The point is we have ideas and have a conversation. My counter argument would be, as far as things like constitutional amendments and dealing with levies and things like that, those can be done at any time. You can run those at any time and run them through the system. The city or the state or the county has to just put the money out there and give it to the county to run that election. Bear in mind, you could do it during, for instance, we didn't do it with school board. I didn't want to move school board because it makes sense of when they are. They are going to be from this time until July because they have to get their work done before kids come in August. So I didn't even move those around. But you can actually run those type of things during those elections. And so it's not like you're bootstrapped into dealing with an even earlier election. And so we go from 4 pages to 4.5 or 5 pages or even 6. The fact is I can actually tell you one thing that I've noticed, even because I'm a math guy and I love statistics. More people pay attention to elections when it comes to even year, especially when it comes to a presidential election. When you have more people putting eyes on elections, you see a lot more people turn out. In fact, when I come up for re-election here in the next couple of months or next year or so, that's a presidential election. So there's gonna be a lot more people voting in general. And I think it brings more eyes to this body to have people look at who they're really representing. And I think that having the only people who are gonna show up honestly for odd year ones are the pundits, the ones that are always the always ones that vote. So I wanted to kind of bring more eyes and more people looking at your guys' elections because I think people need to pay attention not only from all the way to the president, but all the way down to the local. And I've always been espousing that is that local government, you guys have more impact in the day-to-day lives of the city of Billings than I do in the state of Helena, because my stuff is long-term stuff. Your guys' is short-term. Things you do today affect people tomorrow. And so I think that's the reason why I moved is one, I know fatigue's one of them, but honestly, I'd like to have more people pay attention to the city council races because I think that's honestly where, when people tell me there's something going on, I'm like, that's a city thing. And I hate saying that, but.
Okay. Councilmember Neese, is this going to be a quick one?
Don't worry, I've had committee hearings that are longer than this, so.
Yeah, we still have to get to our lobbyist, and I apologize. Amy, do you have to be someplace because we had told Amy we would get to her.
And I can tell you, I can spell her name backwards every time I see her.
Do you know, Chris, what our situation is with Amy? Amy, you're off mute.
Hey, I'm fine. Don't worry about it, Senator Fidel.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Fidel, thank you for coming, and as well as the other representatives, Brewster and Yakowicz. Just a very quick question, because I don't want to get into the debating of the different policies. If I understand correctly, the bills that have been transmitted, you will no longer see them unless they go back to the House, they amend them and come back to you. Do I understand that correctly?
Mr. Mayor, Jesus, I'm about to call you Senator, about to elevate you. Councilman Neese, basically what'll happen is now that they've been transmitted over, now what'll happen is we'll start the process over at the House. So in my situation, all my bills, I believe I have 14 bills that are still alive. I will now go over to the committees on that side, argue my point, and then try to get it through committee, second reading, third reading, and get it onto the governor's desk. If it by chance has a tendency to, let's just say my city council one, it gets over there, they amend it, they want to add in judges. They want to add judges into the even years as well, then they amend it, it gets their third reading, it sends it back to us to concur. If we concur, then it gets, our stamp of approval gets to the governor. If we don't concur, there's a couple different options. We have select committee. If we disagree, we have a select committee, or we can have a free conference committee or a free conference committee. In that case, it'll probably be a conference committee because we don't like the amendment. If we vote down the amendment in the Senate. That's kind of how that process works.
Okay, Mayor, quick follow-up on that. So as our legislative committee formulates some of these opinions that maybe we don't agree with some of the changes or we support it with amendments, we would want to seek out yours or the sponsored bills and then address that to the committees in the opposite house that these are being presented.
Mayor Cole, Councilman Neese, yeah, basically this situation, both houses get a bite of the apple. And so this situation, any bills that you've heard in the House that have come over to the Senate, you have the Senate that has to get it through the process and vice versa. So I mean, in that case, that bill you were talking about, what bill was it? Because I'm in judiciary, so if it's going to.
HB 35 will be.
HB 35. Oh, HB 35. No, that's a local government bill. That's been sitting in mine since the beginning.
And SB 262 we'll be talking to you about, so.
HB's 262, I have to look it up, but yeah, if it's going through
Licensing.
judiciary, that'll go through us, probably some here in the next couple of days. I don't know where it is in the scheme of things. Judiciary is one of our busiest in A committee. A sees every day, B is 3 days a week, and then C's are 2 days a week. So in that one, we hear a lot in judiciary, usually carries the bulk of bills throughout the Senate. I will have to say we're getting close in local government bills, I can tell you that.
Okay.
But that being said, yeah, we'll hear it if you want to keep me up to breast when it comes online. But it's pretty easy. You just follow it on the website very simply. That's how I watch all those bills. So
Okay, we'll be letting you know. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, representatives. We do appreciate all of your efforts and staying in touch with us as we transition. I guess I'll just, it's not a question, but express some concern over Senate Bill 262. That's Daniel Zolnikov's bill on generally revising licensing requirements. You were all around when we had 8 to 10 openly operating brothels on our arterials. And when we passed the massage and spa ordinance, they decided they couldn't operate if they couldn't operate after 9 or 10 o'clock, which was a pretty reasonable requirement, and fill out some paperwork, and they kind of put themselves out of business. So there's a good chance that those would come back if that passes. So that's my own 2 cents on that one. So, but thank you very much. And with that, we'll transition over to Amy Grimales. You guys are more than welcome to stick around if you would like. It's completely up to you. So Amy, welcome to Billings, sort of. And thank you for being with us. And thank you for helping us there at the legislature. And I hope you're enjoying your, I wouldn't say week off, but at least hopefully it's a little bit more manageable than what you've been dealing with over the last couple of months.
Well, thank you. Nice to see all of you. And I thought that was really a great diverse presentation from our 3 legislators who have been very focused on local government. And so I guess, I just wanted to maybe supplement. Of course, you all receive our weekly update, on the bills that we're tracking. I've made some notes to add a few other bills based on this conversation with you all tonight. So I'll work with Mr. Kukulski and Mr. Ifland on that. Myself and Steve Turkowitz are up at the Capitol every day and kind of split up some duties as it relates to working on the City of Billings issues. I think that we have more work ahead. I always think about the first half of the session as I think you heard Senator Friedel talk about that you have to have a bill go from one to the other chamber if it's a general bill that's not revenue or tax or fiscally impacting the state government. But I think we also will see a lot of focus now on tax bills this next session and the budget. My understanding is that House Bill 2, the bill that funds state government, is scheduled to be on the floor a week from this Thursday all day. And that may have changed by a day or two. That really is something to probably keep your eye on as we have a lot of impact in that budget. I think if I was going to share kind of some stats, I also am a person that watches the process as much as the substance. We had 1,413 bills actually introduced out of about 4,800 bill drafts. So, you know, it's a little bit more than a quarter of those LCs. And I think we talked a little bit about legislative council ideas before they become actually introduced as a bill. 60% of those were in the House, 40% were in the Senate. 825 of those were transmitted from one house to the other. That doesn't mean that the other 600 are dead because some of them have fiscal impacts. But I think that's probably important for us to think about. Of that entire process, if you kind of look at the Ledge website, it kind of goes like this down in a little chart, which is interesting. 67 bills have actually passed the House and Senate, and 19 have passed from the Senate, both chambers. So not very many of those 1,413 bills that were introduced. As it relates to kind of the work that we're doing, I would have to say that two of the bills we really were focused on by both Representative Yakowicz and Representative Brewster were the last three bills on second reading in the House. And if you ever want to hear a feel-good speech, you can listen to Representative Yakowicz's discussion with the chamber about how much he appreciates all of them, kind of like how he addressed you tonight with the House Bill 534. That was revising the collections limited for actions brought before city court, the abatement bill. So I think that we're at a place where your input is very important in this next, I would guess we're probably going to have 37 days left, not 45. They're going to meet on a few Saturdays. That will get them to about May 5th as a total end date. I would guess they will be done by that Friday, the last Friday of April. I think that for us to weigh in on things, we really need to have this conversation like we just did with these three gentlemen. It's really important for us to talk about our issues and concerns, but it does go real quickly. So I think getting those thoughts in right now is important. So I want to thank those three legislators for coming and spending time with you and for the questions that you asked them. Mr. Kukulski, I'm happy to address any other areas, but I'm trying to keep it short since I know we're a little bit over your agenda timing.
Thank you, Amy. I'm sure we'll have questions on this end. Chris, did you have anything before we jump into questions from council members?
I turn it over to you guys.
Okay, we'll probably have some questions about specific pieces of legislation. Councilmember Purington has her hand up.
Thank you. So Amy, as we get our weeklies from you, I think sometimes they're more than a weekly, but there are certain bills that we've discussed internally, but they're not on your updates. And so I'm wondering, and I don't have any, I mean, I have them someplace here, but I'm wondering, should we, during our legislative committee that we have on Wednesdays, should we give you a list, if you will, of bills that we think that will affect Billings primarily. I'm not sure how to get the message across that, and I don't know if there's bills that you're supporting that we're not aware of.
Sorry, I had to let my dog out.
No, that's okay.
My home office is also the laundry room. It's real fancy. So, I think that's a great point. We can always do better on my end in terms of keeping our chart up to date. So, if you see anything amiss, and I really appreciate your continued interaction with us on those meetings on Wednesdays. So if you see anything that's on kind of not on the major list that we're sending every week, please let us know or let Mr. Kukulski know or the mayor. We really do try to keep up to speed on that and note the things we're supporting, opposing, and monitoring. So appreciate your extra eyes very much on that.
So Mayor and Council and Councilmember Purinton, what I've been doing after the last at least 3 or 4 is either immediately after that meeting's over or that following morning, I push something out that all the bills that the group voted to oppose or support or still monitor. So if we're missing something, then that maybe I'm not getting that, but that's that message to Amy, but that's what I've been doing after our meetings, and her staff person that next morning always gives me a response of thank you, and I think we've been doing it. So if we're missing something, please let me know.
Well, quick follow-up?
Go ahead, and then Councilmember Denise.
So one thing that really surprised me with Senator Friedel, it was Representative Yakowicz brought up the merit program. And I didn't know that that was something that is still being spoken about, because it's been my understanding with all of my conversations is that that has been a horrible program with a lot of, for a lot of different reasons. And so I would really be interested in knowing more about that and, where that's headed, because that's something that I was really shocked about. We can talk about it later. But
why don't we offline about that? I'd be happy to chat with you. And it sounds like maybe Representative Yakowicz could be part of that conversation too.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think he's coming to your Wednesday meeting, it sounds like, so you'll get an in-person chance to chat with him.
Great. Councilmember Denise and then Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there is maybe some communication maybe being dropped, and so what we're going to do is we'll actually forward the minutes of our meetings to Steve and Amy, so they can actually see the minutes of what we're supporting, because, for instance, HB 35 is not on there, HB 765 is not on there that we've voted support HB 35 with amendments. And so there are some things on there, I think, that we need to, we'll improve our communication of what our committee does to get that over to Amy and Steve so they can get that directly from the committee.
Okay.
Okay, so House Bill 35, I've added that. What was the other one? Sorry.
House Bill 35 is we can talk about, but that's support with amendments, making sure that it's amendments.
No, I got it. What was the other bill? Sorry.
The other one was 675. Oh, I'm sorry, 661 and actually HB 675.
661's on our list. What's the other one? Sorry, 675.
Yeah, 661 just shows monitor, but it should be support. And HB 675 should be support as well.
Got it. Thank you.
And that's all I have for now. I'm sure there's some others we'll find.
Thank you, Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Denise sort of stole my thunder. I really think 661 is an important bill for us to support, so I was concerned that was listed as a monitor. And then I also noticed, just sort of casually, there are 2 CPS bills that made the list and not others. I'm not suggesting for a minute, Amy, that we need to monitor all the CPS bills, but I'm curious what made these 2 make the list.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you said that, because I think you all know we lobby for a few other entities on behalf of the firm, and I watched a lot of those CPS bills and testified on a few of them for Billings Clinic. Senator Lenz himself, if you just pull up Senator Lenz on the legislative website, has over 10. He's carrying a huge chunk of the interim committee that worked on those bills. Senator Manzella, I think, had 8.
Yes.
A few of hers failed the last day. There's a huge swath of those bills. And so, I think the committee talked about putting those bills on, the ones that we have on there. I'm happy to offline about that as well. But maybe the chair of your committee on Wednesday wants to take a look at that list. I'm not sure.
Okay.
There's a lot of bills.
There's a huge amount of bills, and I really don't know that they all need to be on here. I was just curious if there's something special about these 2 bills. And it sounds like no.
Can you just flag the numbers for me?
Yep, so HB 461,
Okay.
and then, Chris, I think I lost the other one somewhere. No, and then SB 318. It's just not clear to me why they're on here. But yeah, happy, Amy, to offline about that if you like.
Well, we just want it to be as inclusive as you all want it to be. We want this list to reflect your wishes of bills to keep track of, whether we're monitoring, supporting, or opposing them. So happy to edit it.
Okay. Hey, Amy, can you just comment about the process here? We get 4,500 bill requests. I guess most of those get drafted, requiring huge amounts of staff in Helena, which often, in my humble opinion, the drafting's not done very well. There's obvious questions that aren't addressed. They're confusing things, but it's a miracle that they do what they do, because they've got 4,500 of these, only a third of which get introduced. There's no limits that I know of on any representative or senator on the number, and it just seems that we're using this shotgun approach that is a waste of a lot of lead and valuable time instead of a rifle. Why doesn't the legislature impose some sort of restrictions on itself in this process?
Oh, Mayor, you're singing a song that I sang last week. You're on a different verse. Let me just say this. As many bill drafts as we don't have on your list, we have a 22-page bill draft list for you right here that I'm looking at. 12 of them have actual bill numbers. 10 of them are full of LCs, as I discussed. And so, Mr. Mayor, you kind of hit on that. We've gone above and beyond. In the last 6 years, we've more than doubled the number of LCs that we've had as a bill kind of LC, right, before it gets introduced. So while we only had, well, I shouldn't say only, while we had 1,400 bills introduced, every one of those bills costs about $2,500 to draft. And so I jokingly said to another lobbyist the other day, I really feel like by the time you get to your 3rd bill and nobody votes for it, you should have to pay for that bill.
Yeah.
Like maybe your first 2 bills, you get like a freebie if no one votes for your bill in committee, but by the 3rd one, I think you should have to pay for that because it might have some repercussions. And so I think that's getting to the point that you're getting at with me, which is, why do we have so many bills introduced? And I would tell you it's 2 things. One, it's term limits. And I say this every time I speak publicly about it. I have my own opinion and I'm not censoring it. I think they're bad. I think that that nobody really kind of gives a lot of guidance anymore. When I started doing this 22 years ago, there were a lot of people that would come to the legislature and say, hey, I've got this idea. And the leadership would say, no, we're not going to do that. Now, is that impinging on people's free speech? I don't know. But I will tell you this. If the bill's been introduced 3 sessions in a row and it failed and it didn't get any votes, it's probably not ready for prime time yet. So, I think that we don't have that anymore. You don't have people kind of saying, well, this would be better for your area. Like Representative Mike Yakowicz went through all of the bills he's bringing and why he thinks they're good for Billings, right? And that's really community focused, just like Representative Brewster did too. And so I think Senator Friedel brought up a few of the things that he thinks are really important on his bill list from a community standpoint. It's hard to do that. And they've all been local elected officials before. So if you haven't been, it's really hard to do that. And that's my first point. My second point is that we had a huge turnover of legislative services staff. And so I think they do a really good job of drafting bills, but you have a lot of people that are pretty junior on that staff. And it takes a lot of time to learn how to draft bills. And I think they're doing a good job, but the volume and a brand new legislative system was put online. So we've had some problems with that from editing. It's just taking some kinks to get through all of that. Besides the fact that the governor's red tape commission had 75 pre-introduced bills, which we've never seen before, with a lot to them. So we had a lot of editing of those bills. A lot of people came in and said, hey, I like the idea, but I want to amend that bill. That took up probably the first 2 to 3 weeks of drafters' time, was editing bills that dealt with licensure that were, over 40 pages and things like that. So those have kind of been, from a process standpoint, a bit of an anomaly this session. And, it's as they always say, making sausage, but it's hard, right? So I hope I answered your question.
Sure.
But
I have
think
no
the same-
hope, but okay, thank you. And it's not just a waste of their time and money and our and the state dollars, but of thousands, if not tens of thousands of members of the public who then have to track this stuff at great expense to themselves. So anyway, anything else for Amy before we move to item number 2, or at least public comment on this item? Not seeing anything. Okay, so we'll open it for public comment. Any public comment on item number 1, this legislative update? No? Okay, all right. No, it doesn't look like we've got any public comment. No one is online, so we'll close the public comment period. And again, Amy, thank you for your service. Representative
Mayor.
Yakowicz, thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday, maybe.
Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks, and I did want to, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thanks to everybody for being so active in the legislative session. Thanks for your emails and your comments. I want to say that you have a really terrific staff. They go above and beyond to read these bills and understand how they'll impact the city of Billings. And, I think I'm pretty good at my job, but I'm never as good as all of you weighing in with your peers in the legislature. And I just want to thank you all for your leadership, and thanks for letting us have the opportunity to work with you.
Appreciate it very much. It looks like maybe we had a member of the public who did want to comment online.
Yeah, Mayor, as you were gaveling it down, I'll say screen name Steve Simonson, but I'm going to guess that's who it is, had his hand up. So we'll see if he still wants to talk. He did put his hand back down.
Great. Steve, are you still with us? If so, and if you wanted to comment on this, you're welcome to do so.
Yes, I am. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Steve Simonson, Billings Association of Realtors, Government Affairs, 5342 Cabernet Lane. Just wanted to put a plug in for House Bill 819. Could really be a game changer on obtainable workforce housing. And Amy and members of the council, we really appreciate the support on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that then concludes our public comment period and item number 1. We'll move to item number 2. This is our park update. And so Mark Jarvis is going to bring up a fancy PowerPoint or a pretty picture or something. And we'll turn it over to our park planner, Mark Jarvis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here this evening to talk about and give you an update on our Billings Parks and Recreation Matching Grant Program. Okay, found the right button. So this, as by way of review, as you know, Council designated this program as part of the fiscal year 23 budget There was $100,000 that was appropriated for that through the PD1 funds. And the objective of this is to promote and incentivize private donations. It makes available public dollars to match up to a 1-to-1 ratio with private dollars. The applications are received quarterly. They're due the first Monday of each quarter. Those grants that are submitted are reviewed and recommended by the Parks and Recreation Department, and then they are approved by the Parks, Recreation, and Cemetery Advisory Board. This first round of grant applications was due January 2nd. We had 3 organizations that applied, and for about 2/3 of the total amount of money. The first one was from the City County Planning Division for $16,640. This is a contingent funding because they were also going for additional grants to fully fund their project, which is to construct a 10-foot wide paved trail from the western parking lot at Rose Park over to the Rose Park Elementary School. They will find out about their other larger grant here in May, and so we just kind of wait and see on that one. Their grant, like I said, is going to be a matching portion to that larger grant. The second one was from Partners for Parks Foundation, $34,110. This is to install amenities such as shade structures, benches, and art along the Skyline Trail project, which is, this area would be basically west of the roundabout going into the airport, all the way over to the subdivisions that are along the rims. Currently, the Partners for Parks is working with the local Architects Association in town. They're going to do a design project, a design competition for the shade structures. So that's going to generate a lot of excitement in the community and give us a lot of good ideas. The third one is Friends of Billings Dog Parks, $16,735. This is to install a new 12-by-12 shade structure with benches up at High Sierra Dog Park. That park is in need of some shade and places for people to rest while they watch their dogs run around and enjoy things there. So just as additional information, round 2 applications will be due April 3rd. The remaining funds are about 1/3 of the total allocated funds. And the details and applications for applying for this money is at our Parks and Rec website, www.billingsparks.org. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. Questions? Bottom line here, Mark, would you say the program is accomplishing what it was intended to accomplish?
Well, I think it is. It's getting private interest into public parks. And I think that incentivizes them to do that. And it just adds another level of community into our parks and sort of community buy-in to our amenities out there and our quality of life.
Great. Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's say at the end of the period, you still have $32,000 left over. What happens to that money? Does it go back into the general fund? Does it stay in the parks? What happens to that if it's not used?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that's up to this body to determine how that would either roll over or whatever.
Rick, can you comment?
Yep, Mayor and Councilmember Boyette. So what was discussed, I think, just recently at our Budget and Finance meeting was the importance of keeping any funds that aren't spent in that separate account. So they don't get lost, they don't just go to the general fund reserve, they'll be in this. And that helps us, I think, stay on top of knowing, are the dollars being appropriated for projects? Are projects getting done? And if at any point in the future, whether more or less money needs to be put into the fund based on the success of getting projects done, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, is there any type of guiding principles of what this money is be requested for? Do you have a document that you could share with the council that says these are the type of requests?
Yes, I believe that's on our website. It gives sort of the rationale for what how we set that up, and really trying to incentivize the private sector in participating in getting amenities into our parks.
Okay, so I think if I can summarize this, we got trails, we got some shade structures, and we've got some amenities on the trail, benches, things along the trail and that. But as far as the rest of the parks, no one's come up to say, hey, we want to do playgrounds or we want to develop a park, nothing that, as far as matching grants for some of that kind of stuff. So if we, for instance, like Castle Rock Park or some of the parks have adult equipment, if they wanted to come and say, hey, I want to fund some of your adult equipment, this money could be utilized to fund something that's on the master plan. If they want to match it, they could be used for some of that as well, correct?
Oh, for sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes, most any amenity in a park could be eligible for this.
Okay, and all the amenities that were approved, those were already on the master plan of the parks that were developed?
Well, there isn't really a master plan for the parkland up on the rims.
Oh, there's not?
Yet. But there has been a lot of public discussion about that and the desire. I think there's been several meetings. I believe the mayor was involved in one of those where we were actually walking along the rims, talking about what kind of amenities would be good up there. But
yeah, that would concern me. We don't have a master plan that would actually help to guide and direct what type of things would be approved up there, because then anyone with the money wanting to fund something may want to put, whatever they want that maybe not be fit the master plan. And so if we don't have a master plan, I would encourage us to really look at that and make sure we have some type of plan. I know that there was a lot of money spent on developing that whole trail. I'm surprised there's not something in there that has some kind of amenities, what they expected to be on there, and then if these things that are approved are actually are kind of fit what was already approved.
Well, I think when the trail was designed, it had a little more narrow focus on basically the trail within the right-of-way. Over time, sort of the vision and the ideas and the excitement for amenities up there has kind of grown. But to your point, I think it would be good to have a master plan. That way we have the public weighing in on that and the public making that recommendation and decision on what should be up there.
Right, and then when they know what to donate for.
Correct, yes.
Chris, you want to comment on?
So Mayor and Council, on the screen you've got, which is what is online, Kevin's pulled up for you. So the program, there is a program. It's not just apply for whatever you want. There is a program, there is a purpose and description. So I take a look at that work that's been done there, and that's guiding it. And remember, this is the first fiscal year that the program has been up and running and funded. So it'll mature and it'll get better. And frankly, I suspect not in the too distant future, there'll be many more applications than there are dollars. Right now, we're just getting rolling, so.
Okay, other questions for Mark? Strangely quiet group all of a sudden. Okay, Mark, I think you're off the hook, at least for now.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right. Do we have any public comment? There's no one present with us and no one online, so we'll close the public comment period. And is there anything else on item number 2 that requires discussion? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3, council calendar and future meeting days. Chris, this is got your name on it, so we'll turn it back to you.
Mayor and Council, one of you astutely looked at your calendar. You probably were planning for the summer and noticed that the 4th of July is on a Tuesday this year. So the question was in that conversation, so are we going to meet on Monday between the holiday, or are we going to meet some other time that week? You guys kind of set the tone of that. So ultimately, candidly, my request or my advice is it's okay every now and then if we have a week off. We meet 4 times a month. And so I would encourage you to consider not meeting the week of the 4th of July with it falling midweek, but that's ultimately up to you. I also put on this agenda the other dates that annually always end up being moved in about October, which is for December of each year. By charter, I believe we're required to have 2 action meetings. So the way we host those 2 action meetings is we end up having 1 work session and 2 actions. And so since we're talking calendar, I put the rest of 2023 on there if you're inclined to. It's not an essential issue, but we'd rather figure it out sooner rather than later. And then after this discussion, if we could talk about the second half of what I put on the table, we can go there.
Sure. So let's focus just on those 2 dates, the possible cancellation of the July 3rd and December 18th meeting dates, and we'll come back to the Monday, Tuesday issue. But just on those 2, is there any discussion? I saw Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Rupsis, Councilmember Neese.
I think it would be great to vacate those and give everyone a break for the 4th of July and December, unless for some reason staff thinks that we need to have those meetings, but they'd both be work sessions, right, that we are skipping. That would be my recommendation.
Councilmember Rupsis?
Well, at the risk of alienating all my colleagues up here, July is one of those 5 Monday months. And I might suggest that we just have our 4 meetings, but just 1 week later.
If that's a motion direct staff, that's actually what I was going to suggest, is to do something similar to that, is just have, pick up a session on the, but there's 5 there, so if you want to make a motion direct, I'll second it.
So you're contemplating still canceling the July 3rd one, but not canceling the 5th one?
Make the 10th and 24th work sessions, and then the 17th and 31st business sessions. So I would make that motion.
I would second that, the direct staff.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have those dates, Chris, in your mind then?
Well, I'm just wondering if, frankly, for the clerk's office, advertising everything else, if it isn't easiest to keep it as close to the normal schedule. So 2nd and 4th are regular meetings, right? 1st and 3rd. So would we keep 10th and 24th as regular agendas and 17 and 31 be the work session?
If you wanted to have 2 work sessions in a row.
No, they.
Yeah.
Oh, we will for the following one. You're right. Sorry, I just was thinking for advertising when it comes to all the planning, land use issues, oftentimes those public hearings and things are well out, so not to confuse those, keep that cycle 2nd and 4th. It wouldn't have to be that way, but it's just a thought.
So Councilmember Rupsis, the meeting on the 10th, would that be regular or work session?
Personally, I'd probably just have it rather be a work session, just so that we keep the work business. But I can understand that point if it's easier to advertise. It just seems kind of weird to have 2 work sessions in a row, last of July and the 1st in August.
Okay. Yeah, was there a motion, or are we just having general discussion at this point, or?
Councilmember Neese implored me to make a motion, so I did.
Okay, and you did, and contemplating the first one being a work session, okay? And Councilmember Nish, you did make that.
I did second that.
Okay, so that's the formal motion that's before you. Discussion on the motion, then Councilmember Gulick.
I think maintaining I see the merits of sort of maintaining our usual pattern, but I think if the public has also gotten conditioned to the second and fourth always being when there would be business meetings that have, that would come, and I'd rather not break from that and then have people confused, I guess. So I think, but I do support the idea of having still four meetings that month, so.
Okay, Councilmember Puritan.
Well, I'll just throw this out there, is that since I knew that was the fifth Monday, I won't be here. But if it were a work session, that'd be okay. Just saying.
You know, I don't have Denise here. I think if I had the clerk's office, they would ask me to speak more strongly to the advertising and all that goes on with the planning board, and the development process. Not to be argumentative, because you're right, it's 2 back-to-back work sessions, but, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. We just need to make sure, which we're planning ahead of time, the clerk's office and the planning office will need to make sure that that cycle stays that people know when the hearings are going to be.
Because it does screw it up.
Okay, because if we stuck with the current pattern, the first one on the 10th would be a regular business meeting. And what we would essentially be doing is we would then be calling a new special session or special meeting on the 31st as a regular business meeting, because otherwise it would be canceled by default.
In fact, it could be, well, no, I don't even want to go there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it'd be a work session. We'd have the 2 back-to-back work sessions. Unless there was no need, in which case at the last minute we'd cancel one, I suppose. Okay. But that's not the motion. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Because we're discussing that, I'm going to put Gina on the spot here now, because I wanted to hear from you on the change to make sure we're not causing some problems with the ordinance as far as when we're supposed to meet, and if this change is going to cause a lot of special meetings, whether it would matter or not. But I just wanted to have your opinion on how this would impact any ordinances or requirements of our meeting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Bernice, your city code does specify that the transaction of regular business is the second and the fourth Mondays of each month. Any regular meeting may be canceled or rescheduled by majority vote of the council at any time prior to the date scheduled for such meeting. So you can make this change. I think that the discussion that you were having about if you're going to schedule a meeting on that fifth Monday, that if you want it just to be a work session, schedule a work session. If you want it to be a regular business meeting, then as I think the mayor suggested, that would be a special meeting. My opinion is that you're already going to have 2 regular meetings on the 2nd and the 4th. So you either don't have a meeting on that 5th Monday or you have 2 work sessions back to back. But if you start changing the clerk's schedule of meetings and the notice requirements, and she has the entire year laid out, I think that's going to, I think at your next meeting, you're going to hear from her about whether she likes that idea or not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because we'd have to cancel all of the meetings for the whole month and reschedule each one in this new pattern is what we'd be doing. Councilmember Boyette.
So I'd like to make a substitute motion that we'd have the 10th and the 24th as the regular meetings, and the work sessions will be the 10th, or excuse me, the 17th and the 31st.
Okay, and Councilmember Purington seconds that substitute motion. Any further discussion on that before we proceed to a vote on the substitute motion? So the substitute motion, again, keeps the existing pattern, but does call for the not canceling the 5th meeting, or whatever the right terminology is. We would move ahead with that, but it would be a work session, unless at the last minute, I suppose, we canceled it. Okay, is the motion clear? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If in opposition, say nay. Passes unanimously. So staff, is
So
that what
let's-
you
let's-
need to go for?
Thank you. Let's keep the rhythm going. So the next one's a lot easier because I don't remember a December where we have ever had an issue relative to canceling one of the meetings in December. So if you're inclined to make a motion now, the clerk will have it for the calendar and she'll advertise it out for the normal swap in December, which is, sorry here, we'll get to December. That would mean it's a cancellation of December 25th work session. And you'd have a regular meeting on the 11th, and the work session that's normally scheduled for the 18th, we'd suggest becoming a regular meeting. So you got work session on the 4th, followed by 2 regular meetings in order to have that break between Christmas and New Year's.
Thank you. Councilor Boyette?
And this is what we've done before, so I move that we have the 4th as a work session and the 11th as a business meeting, and we change the 18th work session to a regular session like we've done ever since I've been here.
Okay. Councilor Purinton?
I just want to clarify the motion is to, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
To clarify, the motion is also to include canceling the 25th meeting on the 25th.
Oh, come on. You guys don't want to meet on the 25th? Gee.
As long as the Chinese restaurants are open.
All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now, back
So-
to Chris.
Mayor and council, you may recall last year after contemplated this and gotten some feedback from a few colleagues around the state, we had a conversation about the benefits of Tuesday city council meetings. Did a little bit of research. I don't want to overstate. It wasn't a scientific analysis, but reached out to a number of the school district, other community organizations, nonprofits and service groups, and ultimately you had considered moving city council meetings from Mondays to Tuesdays. And the memo that you got for tonight was essentially a cut and paste from that prior discussion. Though I did look out for the 2020, so we're talking about the 2024 calendar. So I'm not talking about 2023, I'm talking about 2024 and beyond potentially. Last time, the timing was not good at all. It happened right after election and brand-new council members coming in, and Councilmember Tidswell, he and I exchanged some texts earlier today. It did not work for him. So as I said back then, if it was kind of a Trump card deal, if there was a problem in the calendar for any of the 11 of you, we shouldn't consider this. So we did not. You considered it, but we did not make the change. Since we're here in March, and we're coming into election cycle, we're talking calendar, I just wanted to put it back on the table to you. It's not a dire issue. It's interesting, the mayors and city managers were together up in Helena last week, and I talked to a former Mayor Andrus, who I worked for many years, and I said, and she just said, Chris, we love it. And so she said, anybody wants to talk to us about those of us who've been on the council before and after, she thought many of the things that I'd put in the memo is what they have seen. Again, it's not a hill. I just want to put it out there. See if you want to have consider it. Yes or no. That's your call. Ultimately, it would be an ordinance change, and that ordinance change would be a first reading, second reading, and a 30-day effective date. So, thank you.
Okay. Discussion. Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Actually, I was interested in supporting a move to Tuesday. I'll tell you something interesting about children and Mondays. They don't like them. It's kind of as a flow. I think it would work very well for my situation, and I can't speak for anybody else, and my situation isn't unique or all important, but I really think that Tuesdays would be really a better situation all around. Thank you.
Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I don't know if you're looking for a motion or if that's where we're at with this. I looked to Councilmember Tidswell to make sure that this would, he could work with this, because I think that was really the sticking point, is we don't want to make it impossible for any of us to attend.
I'm not going to fight you on it.
Okay.
And, you know, I have to do what I have to do, obviously. Unless you guys start paying a whole lot more money, I'm gonna have to still do my work, obviously. So I'm not gonna fight you on this. I'll make it work as best I possibly can.
Okay.
But
I mean, the pitch I would make to everyone is I've been constantly frustrated that I'm never able to attend a school board meeting as a parent, and that, I think, is a big problem. I mean, not just for me, but for our community, that you can't attend both of these meetings in a week or in a month. And so I would like to see it change from that perspective also, because I think we talked a little bit last time when we had this discussion about, well, maybe, you know, we could work on ourselves and not bombard staff with so many questions over the weekend. I don't see that having changed significantly, and I understand why it hasn't, but it hurts my heart to see staff having to respond to us on the weekends when they're supposed to be having their time off. So I really like the idea of moving to Tuesdays, and would strongly urge us to consider that for next year.
Councilmember Tricky, Councilmember Purington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where did it go? I move to direct staff to prepare legislation to change the city's code so that beginning in January of 2024, our regular meeting date will be Tuesdays instead of Mondays.
Okay. Did you want to speak to your motion before I give it to Councilmember Purington?
Nope.
Councilmember Purington?
Oh, we need a second.
Oh, we got it from Councilmember Shaw.
Okay, good.
Well, I'm going to go back to the original. I was really surprised when I saw this, because I thought we'd kind of hashed it out pretty well. And I don't work, so I don't feel like I really have a lot to say for those of you that are working in the public and what it looks like for your week. But one of my main concerns that I brought up last time is that I was looking on the task force meetings, and I think the majority of those are on a Tuesday evening. And the suggestion had been, well, they can change their task force meetings. Well, that's not going to be real easy for them to do that. I think it'd just be switching up a lot of different calendars. Personally, for me, just the way that I go is that I like it being on Monday, because I do have the rest of the week to work on the next agenda, if that's the case. I try to get most of my questions in on a Thursday if I can, but it doesn't always happen that way. And so, you know, I still prefer the Monday. I think it just makes sense that it's on the first of the month or the first of the week, and we've got the rest of the week to either handle other meeting times that are already scheduled or not, but because usually Mondays I don't do anything. I mean, that's my day for council. And I'm afraid that if we move to a Tuesday, that's going to knock out other meetings that I do have from time to time, and especially task force meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Bernice?
I appreciate the discussion. I will tell you that from my perspective, the decision to move to Tuesdays would make me very, very sad, quite frankly. I think it would be a real disappointment. I think much of our community is organized around Monday not being a very busy night. And it is true that there's once a month a conflict between city council and school board. That is the case. But I think lots and lots of community activities happen on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so I worry that more and more families are going to run into conflicts because their kids are doing things on other nights of the week, whereas Monday tends to be a night that's not the case. So I am concerned that public participation becomes harder. It's certainly, as a single mom, being a council member is hard enough. And this move would really impact family time. And that would really disappoint me. So I think this puts a hardship on families who are trying to be civically involved and attend kids' activities and orient their work. From my perspective, as someone who watched council before I was elected, and now I do see a huge decline in the number of emails over the weekend. Now, maybe they're just not going to the council emails, so maybe you all are doing things that I don't see, but I see a real decline. I think council members did take that seriously and worked to try to be more thoughtful about when they sent staff questions. And I try to tell staff, this isn't urgent. You can answer this at the meeting. I don't need a response. I've tried to be very diligent to that. I think this would not be a good move, and I would hope we would stay on Monday nights.
Councilmember Dees?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Jennifer has mentioned, all of that, as well as, I'm much more busier at work now, and so when I have to travel, it'll be during the week. Monday I typically don't, but it'll be after that I'll have to start traveling. And now I don't know if I'll be here in 24. I don't know if it's whether election or not, and or what the Senate does with their bill. So who knows 24 is going to happen. So no, I don't. I would not support that. I think Monday nights has been a good night, and I agree that even I have made an effort to make sure I let staff know, hey, this is not something you need to answer now. You can maybe address it during the meeting, and so it's not something. And I know I'm making conservative effort for that, and I hope the staff sees that a lot of this can be answered during our meetings. Doesn't have to be over the weekend. So thank you.
Thank you. Other Councilmember Shaw?
I just have a request, which is that if this fails and we stay with Mondays, could we as a body, would people support writing a letter to the school board asking them to change their date? Because that conflict is really, we can't fix it unless one of us moves our date. So I'd put that in the back of your minds.
There will be a city, school district, county meeting coming up. I won't be there. I'll be in Florida for the change of command ceremony, the USS Billings, but maybe you could add that to that list as a possibility of something to talk about. That would, I don't see any reason not to talk about it then. Chris?
Yes, we can put that on the agenda, and I don't want to leave it unstated because I think it has been a concerted effort by the council and the staff, that being emails over the weekend. So there are fewer, and I think there is a recognition that the expectation isn't on Saturdays and Sundays, those are going to be done unless it's something urgent. So I want to be clear, I'm not bringing this to you because my staff is pleading that we make the change. I will add, in talking to that other elected official, she actually expressed the benefit on her side, which was after being on the council, they don't have term limits for 11 or 12 years. The idea of actually having a weekend day that she's able to dedicate as a free time with her family and have a business day to do business was something she said was quite beneficial to them. But I don't want you guys thinking this is a pressure from our staff because of weekend work. I think that's gotten better after we went through the cycle here this last 18 months. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Purington?
So just a follow-up to that, Chris, is that trying to prepare for the, especially for the regular sessions, especially because it does take a lot more time to prepare for those. More times than not, I have my weekends because I prepare beforehand. I mean, there may be more reading that I do on Sunday or, Sunday afternoon or something, but that's the other reason why my Mondays are free. And if I have questions, those are the questions that I bring to the meetings. And to me, it's the same thing. It's just how do you allocate your own time? And, I'm glad it works for them, but I don't know that it's going to work for us. So anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just point out, it is hard to prepare for work sessions very early because often we don't get the packet till Friday afternoon. So there really is nothing other than the weekend as time to prepare for that. Other discussion on this motion that's before us. I'm not sure the exact terminology of the motion. I didn't write it down that clearly, but it would be to direct staff to prepare paperwork, investigate. Obviously, this is not the decision. This is just sort of moving forward in that direction. So it still has substance for sure. If the motion passes, I guess what I would really want staff to do is to make these inquiries of these other bodies that are meeting on Tuesday nights now, because task forces in particular and boards are really important to for council members to be able to go to. I think we all know that. So if they could not move or didn't want to move, I know that would be very important for me. I'll accommodate either way, but and understand the value of both sides of this. There's a certain default in my mind to don't rock the boat, because the status quo is basically working. But if those other bodies caused a real problem for them, that would be a big factor for me. So anyway, and if I vote for it, it's just keep this ball in discussion, I guess. But Chris, you're nodding there. You don't see any reason we couldn't make some detailed inquiries with these other bodies, and I assume.
Certainly we can. I think those that have, recognize the critical nature of the task forces and their independence from the city. So I would assume it's a question to their boards about their evening and the potential moving it. I know of your boards that are most affected by the changes related to land use planning, because the planning board, zoning commission meets on Tuesdays. So that we've known would be a shift. So if we'll take any direction you want for us to do work, bring back to you, or stop talking about this, anytime in the future years. So.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Further discussion before we vote? Councilmember Purington, you have an inquisitive look on your face.
I do. I'm just wondering, why we have to take a vote so much as, couldn't we just kind of have a consensus of what we're doing? I don't see directing staff to go through and, enumerate all these different boards and everything. I think we kind of did that with the task force the last time, and they were like, ugh. So can't we just kind of look at it and say, what's your thoughts? I kind of like your let's not rock the boat sort of thing, but the others, I know, Kendra has some, heartfelt reasons for changing, but I don't know. I guess a vote's fine.
Do people want to do a straw poll here, or, generally who's in favor of this, who's against it?
Mayor, there's a motion.
Mayor, clarification, because I heard the motion as directing staff to make the move, to change the ordinance to do it, and your summary of that was not. And so I'd like to hear from the movement and the second to make sure that, what the actual motion is.
I appreciate that, and that'd be Councilmember Treaky and Councilmember Shaw.
The motion was basically flipping around the language that's in the thing to direct staff to start drafting the necessary bills in order to move the regular meeting from Monday to Tuesday night, starting in January 2024. And I am certainly fine with adding in the directive that the mayor added in there, that we check with the existing boards and stuff like that are meeting on Tuesday night, making sure that they are willing to accommodate that change.
I would just add, if I may, Mayor, but just add that we would still have to vote on this. They would still bring it back to us. We would still have another vote saying yes or no once the language is in place.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that helps clarify it, but I think that when we go get the information, we may find out that, we don't know that information yet. And so when we go to get the information, we may find out that we would not support this because there's too many boards and commissions that don't like it. And so I won't support the motion because I think it's going to make the staff do a lot of work on preparing documents, and then we find out later that it's not going to, we're going to deny it anyway. And so because the motion includes the language of making sure that we're going to have the staff to start the documentation change, ordinance changes, then I think we should just, as our city administrator said, let's just stop talking about it and move on to something else.
Okay. Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just say if you don't intend to, like, seriously probably support it when it comes back as an ordinance change, then just kill it now. Because it's not worth putting the staff through the effort to do all that stuff. So I support it. I think it's good. As I said before, I think the biggest conflict is Monday Night Football. And that's, we probably lose more participation on Monday nights because of that than from anything else that goes on. So I'm going to support moving it to Tuesdays. I like the idea of having it on a different night than the school board. I think the impact to staff, certainly if that gives them an extra day to be back and be prepared, and certainly being prepared for work sessions. I think it's good to have a Monday and not have to take a weekend day to do those types of things. I think those are all good. I think the task forces, I don't want to understate their importance, but I think kind of how everything is, you just adjust. And if it doesn't work on a Tuesday, then they'll find a different day, and the 6 people that attend the task forces will find a different day. And that sounds callous, and I don't mean it that way, but we have very low participation in those, and I don't think it's because it's on Tuesday nights versus any other night of the week. So I'm going to support it. I will support it when it comes back as an ordinance. But Dan, seriously, if it's an issue for you and it can't support the ordinance, let's just kill it now so nobody has to do the work.
I'm gonna abide by whatever happens to me. I'll figure it all out, but
Okay.
Sorry, but a little callous. No.
All right, and I'm going to vote against it. Councilmember Ripsis has convinced me I don't want to waste staff time, and just too big of a change not to have a clear majority, and this is going to be like a 6-5 deal, and it's just too big of a deal not to have a substantial majority in favor, is my view of it. So, okay, are we ready to vote? So the motion, again, I think is clear to people. If in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are council members Shaw, Gulick, Joy, Chiriky, and Rupsis. If voting in opposition, council members Neese, Owen, Cole, Tidswell, Purington, and Boyette. So narrowly fails. It's obviously still merit, and if people want to work with those task forces and say that's not a problem, and I don't have any problem coming back to this topic later if that's the will of the council. All right. So that concludes item 3. And item 4, upcoming, we never offered an opportunity for public comment, but just for the record, there was nobody in the council room and there was nobody online. So we'll move on. Item number 4, Chris, upcoming agenda items.
Yep, so I'll tackle that real quick, and then Mayor, will you tell me when it's appropriate to possibly ask my questions that I sent out in an email to you guys late this afternoon pertaining to the schedule for the retreat? That's not an item 4, I'd imagine that's after you guys, maybe with your council discussion. Highlights for a week from tonight. You got a couple of action items. First one is an amendment to the action plan for the home ARP grant, or not grant, I'm sorry, the annual plan for FY 21-22. The second action item is the Community Development Block Grant for Comanche Park. Take a peek, take a look at that. Good project, great project. In fact, a number of SEPTED principles are being implemented into that park to improve safety and make investments there. So those are your action items and a fairly stout consent agenda. And then, so that's preview for next week.
Okay, thank you very much. Any public comment? Any comment by council? And there's no one present to comment with us or online, so we'll close the public comment period officially. But was there anything from council? Don't see any, so Councilmember Purington, go ahead, sure. Yeah.
Are you on number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Yes. No, I'm on council discussion.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to council discussion. Back to you.
Thank you. So one of the things that, and this may play into what you want to do also for the retreat, but Kevin and I have kind of gone back and forth on one particular sale of these parklands. And Kevin did present several questions, for consideration. And I know the council has said, yeah, we want to do this, but there's been no movement on it. And, there is a concern that, it is going to involve some staff time. But I think as we move forward with a park levy and dollars that we're looking at towards a park levy, I would really like to have a discussion on some of the questions that Kevin had posed to me. Well, we need to look at A, B, C, D, and I've got your email and you know what you said. So I would really like to, for us to really hone in on that. And if we're going to do it, then let's do it. Don't leave it hanging there. And in 3 years, we look at it again and, oh darn, that was your initiative and we haven't done anything with it. So I would kind of like to put some legs on that. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
but however, several components here, right? There are, 4 parcels of which are in very active, but yes, they are bogged down in our bureaucracy, which is the legal process of disposing of public property. So working with a real estate broker on those 4. I think, though, if I understand right, Councilmember Purington, you've been approached by someone in our community who wants to buy one of the other slivers adjacent to their home. And yes, we have not moved on any of the other ones as we're working on all the other projects that we've got going on, trying to get these first 4 off the ground and work on the other priorities, and haven't prioritized getting another broker or getting somebody else to start moving on other, I forget, several dozen other parcels that are here yet. It's not because we don't want to. It really has been a staff time as much as anything. We could bring it to a work session. We have some work sessions that aren't slammed. We have an opportunity to talk with Kevin and our staff. I'm not sure what the email exchange was, but he's been keeping me up to speed that someone is very interested in buying one of the parcels adjacent to their, I don't know if their personal property, their home, or their business.
And Chris, just, there's no reason that if somebody wants to move ahead with a particular parcel, they can't make us an offer, right? We don't have to do all of it together, do we?
No, we don't have to do it. Go ahead, please.
So Mayor, we have to put out basically an opportunity for people to bid on the properties. So there is a process. It does involve, as I'm finding out, considerable staff time to get that done. So I think if we had more of a, either, and I sent this to Councilmember Purington, either, here's a block of properties we're interested in actually selling. And then again, the second question is, council, do you want people to just buy that because it's adjacent to their home and they're not going to do anything with it? Was the intent of selling the properties to just get them off, get them back on the tax rolls? Or was it to see development on those properties, something of that nature? So I think we'd need more direction from council on, what's council's appetite for the properties that we would put up? What's that kind of, what I would call a development agreement, because that's what we're working on, for some of these other properties. What does that property, have to develop into, or can people just buy it on speculation? And there's some other questions I talked to Councilmember Purington about, but finding out they're very time consuming to move them forward, one single one at a time.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Mayor, could I just back up on one of my statements here? Sure. When I look at the next 60 days of legislative session, when I look at putting a budget together, when I look at hiring a parks director, when I look at, everything that's going on right now, honestly, I don't think this would fit on many of your priority lists either in the next 60, 90 days. I'm not saying punt it for 6 months or a year, but there is a lot going on that we need to do well over the retreat that's coming up. I mean, there's a lot of really important stuff in these upcoming weeks and few months. So even though the agenda doesn't look horrible for the next work session, I really don't want to put something on there that has Kevin and the staff chasing stuff, because I forgot to mention the biggest thing on his plate, getting a city hall built. I mean, those guys every few days are spending hours on that project.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Joy. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think when I appreciate Councilmember Purington's bringing this up, prompted by whatever has happened, but I'm thinking back to our discussion, and one of my points was at the time is that there is a parcel of land that is sizable. It's not in Ward 3, but it is in an area where constituents have called me and said, when is that going to become a park? And I said, well, so I think part of what Assistant City Administrator Ifland is talking about is how we as council actually see what we're trying to achieve with that. And I don't think we've arrived at that point where we can say what we actually want to happen. That person and people around there think that should be a park. They want a park. It just hasn't happened. So, once it isn't a park, if you just sell it off and they put an office building or they put housing on it, it can never be a park. So you're not just talking about whether or not or when we can develop a park, you're actually deciding there will never be a park there. And so I don't think we've come to that point at council where we've thought about the fact that we're actually saying you will never have a park. So I think that's a part of a discussion that we should have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this before we adjourn? Councilmember Shaw, I recognize, and then Councilmember Denise.
Thank you. I want to switch topics. Chris had asked us to come up with some information about the retreat, when we start, when we stop. I just pulled up his email. I thought maybe we can just do this real fast.
Before we do, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure, Councilmember Denise, are we done on this end? Or
Same topic that we were just talking about.
Okay, if you can, and then we'll, Councilmember
I
Shaw.
agree with Chris as far as the timing of, there's a lot going on right now, but I think we just made sure we kept our work sessions, and there would be an extra one in the end of July that we maybe can shoot for, because I know that we saw the map and there are lots of different parcels, and, it was like, wow, there's a lot there. So to Councilwoman's point, Joy's point, I mean, there are people expecting parks in a lot of these areas. We need to really have a good idea of what the people are expecting before we make some changes. And I think maybe if we can shoot for a work session in that time, maybe they can have the Parks Department have some of that narrowed down for us by then, hopefully.
Yeah, okay, because most of those parcels are never going to be a park. They're just tiny, and hopefully the Parks Department could say, we're going to take the bottom 20% and just deal with those. Okay, Councilmember Shaw?
Okay, I'm going to try and do this fast so we can get out of here without taking a break. So the question is, what time do we want to start on Friday? 1 o'clock or 1:30? 1 o'clock? Anyone have an objection to that? Okay, 1 o'clock. What time on Saturday? 8, 8:30, or 9? 7:30? 8:30.
What time to start?
Yeah, to start in the morning.
Because when are we going to finish up? We're not going.
That's next.
Okay.
I'm just trying to go through. Okay, should we do that one first? Okay, so what time do we want to end on Friday? 6, 6:30, or 7?
It includes
7?
dinner at the, right, so.
Okay, so start at 1, end at 7. Saturday, do we want to start at 8, 8:30, or 9?
Can I just, it's my understanding that the schedule as it's shaped right now is to talk about parks on Friday and public safety on Saturday. So I guess I would ask the question of whether or not we think the parks conversation requires 6 hours, and then remembering to how much time we need to leave for public safety on Saturday.
We also last year did not include lunch at the end.
Right.
Because it kind of figured we'd get ourselves out faster that way, which to me means you want to start a little earlier.
8:30? No. Start at 8? I can live with that. Okay, start at 8, and then what time do we want to end on Saturday? 12:30, 1, or 1:30? At least 1 or 1:30? Yeah.
But still no lunch?
I think in yes to lunch.
What kind of slave masters are you? Yeah.
Do we want lunch on Saturday? I would say yes.
Yes, lunch
Let's
on
do lunch on Saturday, and then we can stay longer, right? And then the last question is, what time do we want dinner on Friday?
Oh, I'll just put it at the end. I mean, if we're
Okay.
ending at 7, my assumption is the last hour or would be, that's what we would do. And so for Saturday, then do I hear we want lunch brought in 8 to 1, having lunch brought in, so 12 to 1 will be the lunch. Councilmember Owen's question is a very good, legitimate one, and I think it is part of this challenge, is I think Friday's time, which is greater, we won't need as much time on the parks discussion as we will need on the public safety discussion. So we may need to we may wrap up parks and then start getting into public safety Friday night and then keep it rolling in the morning.
Okay. I think we just, or Councilmember Shaw just helped us resolve all those issues, I think, right? All right. Very good. Anything else in the way of general council discussion?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Treaky?
I assume some of you or all of you saw the emails that have been going back and forth about the rail line that is being discussed about coming through the southern part of Montana. I have asked someone to help me to start putting together a resolution which would state something along the lines that the Billings City Council supports those efforts that are happening. They are taking public comment on their website until March 17th. So I would encourage people to get the word out to get public comment going on that. I doubt we'll have the resolution by that point. Thank you.
And if there's no resolution but a need for a letter within the comment period, what I would suggest, Councilmember Treaky, is we go ahead and write some sort of a letter, and we're happy to put it on my letterhead and saying the following members of the city council, and then whoever wants to can sign. If you don't want to sign, you don't have to, and that would allow it to move forward.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So we don't suggest that other council members are on board if they haven't officially approved something. Okay, Councilmember Owen?
Just a reminder, this was mentioned earlier, but big exciting day tomorrow, groundbreaking for the Skyline Trail and the Inner Belt Loop at 1 o'clock for the Skyline Trail up by the water tower, and at 2 o'clock for the Inner Belt Loop at the intersection of Alkali Creek and Wicks. So it's a great day for our community.
Absolutely. And it's going to be 74 and sunny, guaranteed. Okay, council, we'll move on then. Any public comment on non-agenda items? The record shows there's nobody with us or online, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.